My name is Margaret Ellison, and I'm 71 years old. This past Thanksgiving, I stood alone at Gate 4C of the Denver International Airport, my wheeled suitcase parked beside me, a red cardigan draped neatly over one arm, and a glass pie dish wrapped carefully in a tote bag at my feet. I had flown halfway across the country because my son, Nathan, called and said they wanted me there. "Fly out, Mom. It won't be the same without you. The kids are asking about you nonstop." He said it like an afterthought, but I held on to the warmth of it like sunlight in December. I'd saved up my small pension scraps, dipped into my emergency fund tucked in an envelope under the sink. I'd even splurged on a window seat and prepaid for a carry-on just to make it easier. The night before, I'd stayed up carefully packing the little gifts I'd bought. 2 books for Henry and Bella, my grandchildren, and a box of those sea salt caramels Julia, my daughter-in-law, used to like. I also bought a new navy cardigan, soft wool, to make myself feel a bit more like someone who belonged in a family photo. I didn't tell anyone at the senior center I was leaving town. Something about it felt too precious, too easy to jinx. It had been years since I'd been invited anywhere without a chore attached, without being the one who brings the food, the money, the extra set of hands. But this time, they said it wouldn't feel right without me. That was the line that echoed when I clicked purchase on the flight. That was the hope I stuffed gently between my folded socks. The flight landed early. I walked out to arrivals full of anticipation, scanning each car, every approaching figure. I checked my phone, no messages. But I wasn't worried yet. I stood patiently under the sign outside door F, watching people stream out of the terminal and into waiting arms. There were kids holding welcome signs, balloons bouncing against ceiling tiles, hugs so tight you'd think someone had just returned from war. And there I stood, a forgotten figure in the swirl of joy. Still, I waited. I checked the flight board again. Yes, my plane had landed on time. I checked Julia's text once more. "We'll be there. Kids can't wait to see you." That was sent 2 days ago. I had replied, "Flight lands at 3:20. Can't wait to hug everyone." No response. 40 minutes passed, then 50. A woman with a baby stroller offered me a sympathetic glance, the kind strangers give to elderly women standing alone too long. I smiled back, not wanting to look as hollow as I felt. Eventually, I sat down on the bench just outside baggage claim. I didn't want to. Sitting felt like surrender. But my knees had started to ache, and the air was biting cold. That's when my phone buzzed. Not a call, not even a text. A social media notification. I normally ignore them, but sometimes Julia posts family photos there before calling me. So I tapped it open. And there it was, the picture. My son Nathan, wearing the navy sweater I mailed him last Christmas, Julia beaming beside him, tan and glowing like she always is. Henry and Bella laughing, forks lifted, seated at a long candlelit table. There were mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, a golden brown turkey. A pie sat at the center. Not mine. The caption read, "Full house, full hearts. Happy Thanksgiving from our family to yours." My thumb hovered over the screen, refusing to scroll. I stared at their smiling faces, at the table so crowded there was no room for one more chair, no room for me. My stomach dropped. There was no mistake. There was no car coming. There was no seat set. There had never been a place for me that day. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stood, pulled on my coat, and walked away from the terminal, leaving behind the echoes of laughter and the dream I had dared to believe. I walked without knowing where I was headed. The cold sharpened against my skin. I passed taxi signs, shuttle bays, rental car counters, my breath leaving small ghosts in the air. My phone buzzed again. A calendar alert. Thanksgiving dinner, 5 p.m. I silenced it. It wasn't dinner. It was a reckoning. 3 days before the flight, Nathan had called me. That alone should have told me something. My son rarely calls unless there's an occasion or a need. His voice had been syrupy, practiced. "Hey, Mom, you doing anything for Thanksgiving?" I told him I was staying home. "Just me, maybe a little roast chicken. I've got an old Cary Grant movie queued up." "Well," he said after a pause, "the kids have been asking about you. We thought it'd be nice if you came here. Everyone will be together." I remember that exact phrase. It wouldn't feel right without you. It cracked something open inside me. Wanting. That rare feeling I used to associate with birthday invitations, with warm hands reaching back. I said yes. Not because of guilt or obligation, but because I believed him. Because I needed to. Nathan didn't offer to pay for the ticket or even book it. I didn't expect him to. I still had the money I saved from skipping a few prescriptions and canceling my cable. I called it my in-case fund, and this felt like a case worth using it for. I booked the ticket that night. I went to the store the next day and bought a new pair of black shoes. Not fancy, just something with a slight heel and a bit of shine. I wanted to look like someone worth picking up. I even picked up cinnamon sticks and my old recipe card for apple pie. I cleaned the house before I left, set the heating to low, watered the philodendron, tucked a note under the magnet on the fridge that said, "Be back Sunday." I didn't tell any soul. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't want to say it out loud in case it didn't stay true. Thanksgiving morning, I woke early, put on my good slacks and my softest blouse, pulled my hair back neatly. I looked in the mirror and thought, they'll be happy to see me. That thought stayed with me until the terminal, until the first 30 minutes passed, then 40, until the bench, until the photo, until it broke. I walked for nearly a mile before I found it. A squat brick building with a flickering neon sign that read, "Jackie's Diner." A cartoon turkey decal clung to the fogged-up window. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of grease and cinnamon. A waitress in a wrinkled apron looked up. "Happy Thanksgiving, hun." "Same to you," I said, my voice even. I sat down at a booth near the window. The seat was cracked, but warm. The menu had 3 options circled in pen: turkey, stuffing, or pie. "What kind of pie?" "Pumpkin or pecan," she replied, then added, "We got tea, too." "Pumpkin and tea, please." My phone sat face down on the table. I didn't flip it over. I didn't need more pictures of what I wasn't invited to. When the pie came, it was warm and imperfect. The whipped cream listing to one side. It was the best thing I had tasted all year. Maybe not because of the flavor, but because it was mine. Just mine. I ate slowly, without a smile, without sadness, just truth. I was there, present, breathing, and no one could take that from me again. When I finished, the waitress asked if I wanted another slice to go. I nodded. "For later," I said. She winked. "Best decision you'll make all day." I believed her, and I took that slice of pie like a talisman, a symbol, a turning. I had no plan, no hotel booked, no rescue waiting, but I felt something shift inside as I stepped back into the cold, the bag warm in my hand, and the weight of expectations slipping off my shoulders like a coat I no longer needed to wear. I didn't have a destination in mind as I walked away from Jackie's Diner, only the growing realization that I could no longer carry the weight of pretending. The air had turned colder, biting harder at my cheeks, but the warmth of the diner still clung to my skin. I pulled the coat tighter around me and gripped the pie bag like it was an anchor. Ahead, a flickering motel sign caught my eye. Maple Shade Inn. The kind of low-slung place with peeling paint and vending machines humming in the lobby. But it had lights on, and that felt like enough. Inside, the front desk clerk didn't look up from his phone until I cleared my throat gently. He was maybe in his 20s with a name tag that read Derek and an air of practiced indifference. "Need a room?" "Just for tonight," I said, my voice steady. "Single bed." He slid a paper form across the counter without comment. ID and card. I handed them over, watching his fingers tap across the keyboard as the printer began humming. He handed me a key with a plastic tag. Room 107. All the way at the end. I nodded and wheeled my suitcase back into the night, boots scuffing against the cracked sidewalk. The room was what I expected: beige carpet, yellow tinted lighting, two mismatched lamps, and a bed with a faded floral comforter that had seen better decades. The heater groaned as it kicked on, filling the silence with something familiar and flawed. I dropped my bag beside the dresser and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't open the blinds. I just sat, the pie beside me, the silence curling around my shoulders. My feet ached from the walk, my back throbbed slightly from the plane, but my heart, that strange, often betrayed muscle, felt eerily still. Not cold, not broken, just still. I pulled my notebook out from the side pocket of my suitcase, the one I used for grocery lists, idle thoughts, small hopes I didn't voice aloud. I flipped to a blank page and wrote the sentence I'd been holding back for years. I am not extra. I am not spare. I am not the leftover at someone else's feast. I stared at the words, then underlined them. Hard. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. That sentence had done the bleeding for me. I made myself a motel tea with the in-room coffee maker, bitter, weak, but hot. I sipped it slowly while staring at the ceiling. There was a crack that ran from corner to corner, jagged like a scar. I traced it with my eyes. Somewhere outside, a car horn honked, a couple argued in muffled tones. The world kept turning, and I stayed still. The next morning, I woke before dawn. My body still insisted on being useful before 6, even after retirement. I made another cup of tea and pulled the second slice of pie from the white paper bag. It was soft now, slightly crumpled, but I ate it with the same reverence I had the first. Because it was mine. Because I had chosen it. At 7:14, my phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting another notification from a news app or perhaps a weather alert. But it was a text. Nathan. Mom, I'm so sorry. Julia got the dates mixed up. We thought you were arriving Friday. The kids really want to see you. Can you come to the house today? No mention of the photo. No apology for the dinner already posted to hundreds of people. Just a soft excuse wrapped in confusion. I set the phone down. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That text was a spotlight, and I had already stepped out of the glare. I showered, dressed in the same navy cardigan, and checked out of the motel. Derek didn't look up when I handed him the key. I stepped back into the clean November air. The sky above, a startling kind of blue. Cold, brittle, and wide. I didn't head back to the airport. Not yet. I needed to do something first. I walked. Through half-empty parking lots, past chain restaurants blinking open signs, until I reached a postal center tucked between a gas station and a shuttered beauty supply store. Inside, the clerk, a young woman with chipped pink polish on her nails, smiled and said, "Morning. I need an envelope. And a stamp. To Massachusetts," I said. She handed them over. I sat at the counter beside a faded bulletin board and began to write. My letter wasn't long, but every word mattered. Dear Claire, I want you to know that when you told me you were my safe place, it meant more than anything. This Thanksgiving didn't go how I thought. I flew across the country for a dinner table that didn't have a seat for me. But something happened in that silence. I remembered who I am. I am not a placeholder. I am not background. I am someone who deserves warmth that's given freely, love that arrives without needing directions. I sealed the letter and addressed it by memory. Claire was Nathan's daughter from his first marriage. She was 22 now, in grad school, studying to be a physical therapist. She called me once a month just to talk. She sent me pictures of her dog. She asked for my banana bread recipe. She remembered me not because she had to, but because she wanted to. That distinction was everything. I mailed the letter and walked 3 more blocks to a nearby cafe with big windows and warm scones. I stayed there for hours. watching the world move outside, watching my own heartbeat slow inside. At 3:45, I booked a return flight. Same airline, same gate, different woman. I didn't tell Nathan. I didn't respond to his next two texts or the voicemail that followed. I wasn't angry. I was done. I boarded the plane early, found my seat, and stared out the window. The engine hummed beneath my feet, steady and indifferent. I pulled out my notebook again, flipped to the page I had written in the motel. Beneath the sentence, I added one more line. I will not wait to be seen by people who choose not to look. The plane took off, and I watched the lights of their city disappear behind me, like smoke rising from something I no longer needed to save. When the plane landed, it was already dark. My little town glowed beneath a thin layer of frost, the kind that coated roofs and curled around stop signs. The shuttle bus that took me back to the parking lot was quiet, just me and an older man with a veteran's cap. He nodded once, and I nodded back. There was a simplicity in that kind of exchange. No questions, no expectations, just presence. The shuttle driver helped me with my suitcase. Visiting family? He asked gently, the kind of question people ask out of habit, not malice. I offered a small smile. Not exactly, I said. He didn't press, just closed the trunk and gave a light tap to the side of the van. I drove home with both hands on the wheel, the heater set to high, my thoughts slow and deliberate. There were no tears, no heartache music playing from the radio, just silence, thick and honest. My house greeted me the way it always did, with a porch light still burning and the faint scent of lavender from the dried bundle I kept near the radiator. I stepped inside, removed my coat, and set the pie dish in the sink. The kitchen clock ticked steadily. I didn't turn on the overhead light, only the small lamp above the stove. Soft light spilled across the counter. I moved slowly through the rooms, touching familiar objects. The photo frame of Claire and her graduation gown, the knitted throw on the armchair, the worn chessboard that still bore the dents from years of friendly battles. I made a cup of chamomile tea and sat at the kitchen table, the one that had held countless meals, family birthdays, and quiet Sunday mornings. My gaze drifted to the drawer beside the fridge, the one labeled Important. I opened it. Inside were 3 folders. One marked Nathan, one marked Claire, and the third, thicker than the rest, marked Legal. I pulled out Nathan's first. Tuition receipts, a car loan agreement, a printout of a down payment I helped with when he and Julia bought their first home. A scribbled note in Julia's handwriting from 12 years ago. We'll pay you back in March. Thank you so much. They never did. Birthday cards I sent to Henry and Bella, photos returned with no captions. I turned each page slowly, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Then I opened Claire's. It was thinner, but different. Thank you notes written in her neat, slanted hand, a dried flower she'd pressed between the pages of a letter, and at the very bottom, a printed email from 2 years ago. Grandma, I miss you. Just wanted to say that out loud. I sat back. The contrast between the 2 folders was sharp, not in volume, but in weight, in meaning. I poured the rest of my tea and opened the Legal folder. At the top was my will, drafted nearly a decade ago. Nathan and Julia were listed as primary beneficiaries. Claire was listed as secondary. It felt outdated. It felt wrong. I pulled out a sticky note and scribbled, "Call Mr. Ledbetter." He'd been our family attorney for years, kind, methodical, never in a rush. I placed the note on top of the folder and slid it to the edge of the table. Then I pulled out my notebook again. I wrote one line. I am allowed to change my mind. The next morning, I was at the bank before the doors even opened. The wind was sharp, slicing through my scarf, but I welcomed it. It made me feel awake. I waited by the door until a young man with a kind smile unlocked it. "Good morning, Mrs. Ellison. How can I help you today?" "I'd like to speak with someone about my accounts. All of them." He nodded and led me to a small office with frosted glass walls. A woman named Rochelle greeted me with professional ease, her hands manicured and her desk meticulously tidy. "Of course. What can I assist you with today?" "I want to stop all automatic transfers to my son and his family, effective immediately." She blinked, her fingers paused above the keyboard. Are you sure? Yes. She began typing. That includes monthly contributions to tuition, car insurance, and the household account marked Ellison Family Fund. Yes, all of it. Keep the charities, stop the rest. Rochelle paused, her eyes scanning the screen. Would you like to explain why? I met her eyes. I've explained enough in my life. I don't need to anymore. She didn't push. She clicked a few more boxes and said, all set. I can prepare the paperwork for cancellation if you'd like to come back tomorrow. I'll be here. There's one more item, she added carefully. You have a durable power of attorney on file naming your son, Nathan. Would you like to keep that as is? I didn't flinch. Revoke it. Rochelle nodded slowly. Understood. She printed out a short form and handed me a pen. I signed with steady hands. Would you like to name a replacement? Not today. I'll think on it. When I stepped back outside, the frost on the pavement had melted, but the clarity I carried hadn't. I walked down the block and stopped by the bakery, bought myself a fresh roll with rosemary and sea salt. I walked the long way home. That afternoon, I called Mr. Ledbetter. Margaret, he said, his voice the same warm baritone I remembered. What can I do for you? I'd like to revise my will, and I want to create a trust. For Claire? Yes, everything. I own. Every account, every asset. It should be hers. And Nathan? Removed. He didn't ask why. Lawyers like Mr. Ledbetter have heard every version of heartbreak. Let's set an appointment for tomorrow morning. After we hung up, I sat by the window and watched the late sun pour across the hardwood floors. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt precise. I was finally drawing the boundary I should have drawn years ago. That evening, I pulled the pie dish from the sink, washed it gently, and tucked it back into the cupboard. Not because I planned to bake again soon, but because maybe, someday, I would. For someone who showed up. For someone who saw me. Or maybe just for myself. The next morning, the sky was a soft, cloudless gray. That gentle kind of winter light that settles across rooftops and feels like a held breath. I dressed with care, not for anyone else, but for myself. I chose my wool trousers, the ones that always made me feel taller, and the cardigan I had bought for the trip. It still smelled faintly of cinnamon and the plastic packaging it came in, but it draped over my shoulders like quiet armor. At precisely 9 a.m., I stepped into Mr. Ledbetter's office. His receptionist, an older woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile, greeted me like an old friend. "It's good to see you, Mrs. Ellison," she said. "Go on in. He's expecting you." Mr. Ledbetter stood as I entered. He hadn't changed much, still trim with silver hair and a navy vest over his shirt. His office smelled of leather, old paper, and lemon polish. "Margaret," he said, "come in. Sit down. Let's talk about this new plan of yours." I settled into the chair across from his wide desk. "I want to make sure that everything I own, my house, my savings, my pension, is placed in a trust for Claire. She is the only beneficiary now." He didn't blink, just nodded. "And Nathan?" "Removed. Entirely." "Do you want to include a clause or statement of intent? Something to explain the change?" I paused, then nodded. "Yes. Not for legality, for clarity. I'll write a letter myself. It won't be dramatic, just honest." He scribbled a note. "We'll include it with the file. And you'll retain full control of the trust while you're living?" "Exactly." "Understood." We went through each item. The deed to my home, my small investment accounts, my life insurance, even the old CD my husband and I opened when we first got married. All of it would be protected. All of it would go to Claire. By the time we were done, the morning sun had crept across the windowsill. Mr. Ledbetter gathered the documents into a neat folder. "I'll have everything finalized in a few days. You'll come in to sign and notarize." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. As I stepped back outside, the air had changed. Not warmer, not lighter, just clearer. I walked home slowly, stopping at a small florist along the way. A cluster of poinsettias caught my eye. Deep red, full, vibrant. I bought one and carried it under my arm like a gift to myself. At home, I placed it in the center of the kitchen table. That's when the phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but I knew it. I answered. "Grandma?" Claire's voice was breathless, warm, and slightly unsure. "I got your letter." I sat down in the chair by the window, the phone pressed gently to my ear. "You did?" "Yes. I didn't know what happened. Dad and Julia said you canceled the flight last minute. They made it sound like you just changed your mind." I closed my eyes for a beat. "No, I was there, Claire. I landed. I waited. I saw the photos." There was silence, then a shaky breath. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I had no idea." "I know, sweetheart. That wasn't on you." Her voice cracked. "I missed you so much that day. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel whole." That did it. My throat tightened, but still, no tears came. Just warmth. Steady, strong. "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you now." "Can I come visit next weekend? I have a break between finals. I'll take the train." My hand gripped the phone tighter. "Of course," I said. "The guest room is already made." "I'll bring the chessboard," she said, her voice lifting. "You still play?" I never stopped. After we hung up, I sat for a while, the silence around me no longer sharp, just full. Claire arrived Saturday just after noon. I stood at the train station in my warmest coat, holding a small paper bag with a sandwich and an apple inside, just in case she hadn't eaten. She stepped off the platform in a gray hoodie and jeans, her curls tucked under a knit hat, and a canvas bag slung across her shoulder. When she spotted me, her face lit up. She ran toward me, arms wide, and hugged me like I was something she didn't realize she'd been missing until that exact second. "Hi, Grandma," she whispered against my shoulder. "Hi, baby. You're here." We drove home quietly. She watched the streets pass like someone memorizing a map. I drove slowly, not wanting to miss a moment. Back at the house, she dropped her bag in the guest room and curled up in the living room with the kind of comfort that only comes when you feel safe. The chessboard was waiting. We played a game. She won. Then we played again. I won that one. Dinner was pasta with garlic and spinach. She cooked and I grated cheese. We talked about nothing and everything. Her classes, her cat, the paper she was writing about patient dignity. Later, we watched a movie we both agreed was terrible and laughed too hard at scenes that weren't funny. That night, before bed, she sat beside me on the couch and held my hand. "I don't want to lose you," she said. "I won't," I told her. "Promise?" "I can't promise forever, but I'm not going anywhere yet." She hugged me again, gentler this time, but no less real. After she went to bed, I sat in the living room alone for a while. The quiet was peaceful. The clock ticked steadily behind me. I looked at the photos on the mantel, some faded, some missing. But one remained, me holding Claire as a baby, her tiny hand gripping my finger. I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. Claire left Sunday afternoon. I packed her leftover pasta, a scarf I had knitted, and something unspoken that traveled between us like a promise. She hugged me tight before she boarded the train, her breath fogging the glass as she waved goodbye. I stood there until the train disappeared from view. The house was quiet when I returned, but not lonely, not this time. It was a silence with shape, with weight, with peace. And as I folded the blanket from the couch and placed the chessboard back on the shelf, I whispered to myself, not with anger, not with pain, but with conviction, I am not waiting anymore. I am done being forgotten. If that truth sits heavy with anyone, let them carry it. Not me. I've carried enough. That evening, after Claire's train disappeared down the tracks and the last of her laughter echoed out of the hallway, I walked through my house differently. I moved from room to room, touching the walls like they were new. Not because the structure had changed, but because I had. In the kitchen, the poinsettia still bloomed boldly on the table. Its red petals caught the light as if proud to be seen. I set the kettle to boil and reached again for the drawer beside the fridge. I pulled out the folders, Nathan's, Claire's, and the legal one, and laid them flat before me. Nathan's folder, still thick with paperwork, felt heavier than it had days earlier. There were notes scribbled in margins, IOUs, copies of bills I'd paid in full without fanfare. I remembered the time I paid for his dental procedure when insurance refused to cover it. I remembered Julia's quiet voice asking me to cover school supplies for the kids one fall because they were in a bit of a tight spot. I remembered every time I had said yes, even when no was the answer I had earned the right to give. And yet, I'd done it. Not for thanks, but for family. I opened Claire's folder again. It still fit easily in one hand, and yet, page for page, it held more realness than anything else in that drawer. Her thank you notes were written in colored pens, her birthday cards always on time, and that email from 2 years ago. Grandma, just wanted to say I love you. No reason, just felt it. I placed my hand gently over the folder and closed it. Then, I opened my notebook, not to write a letter this time, but a list. I titled it, Things I No Longer Owe. I wrote, explanations, guilt for saying no, patience for people who never offer the same, a seat at a table that only pretends to have room for me, silence when I deserve to speak. Then I made another list, things I still have, my name, my peace, my voice, my home, my right to choose. Claire. I folded the page in half and taped it to the inside of the cabinet beneath the sink, just behind the dish gloves and sponges. A place where only I would see it, where it would remind me every day. That night, I lit a candle. Not for a holiday, not for ambiance, but for myself. I opened a bottle of red wine I'd been saving for company that never came, and poured a glass. I heated a bowl of leftover soup, set one place at the table, and sat. Not waiting, not scrolling, just being. Just me. And it was enough. Later, as I washed the bowl and dried the spoon, I thought about all the years I had spent being available. Every birthday party I brought the cake for but wasn't mentioned in the speeches. Every family photo I took but wasn't in. Every thank you I never heard. I had told myself it didn't matter, that the giving was the reward. But it mattered. Not because I needed applause, but because presence deserves to be met with presence. Effort with effort. I made a cup of tea and carried it to the porch. The air was crisp, the kind that whispers change into your collar. I sat wrapped in my quilt and watched the neighborhood turn in for the night. Lights clicked off one by one. Somewhere down the block, a child's laughter rang out. A dog barked twice. The world was small and wide, quiet and loud, all at once. I thought of Nathan as a child, how he used to leave little notes on my pillow, drawings of dragons and spaceships, how he'd cry if I left before sunrise. And I thought of how slowly that little boy disappeared, replaced by someone who forgot to look back, who only called when something needed fixing. My heart didn't ache the way it used to. It just pulsed slowly, a beat of truth, not sorrow. I went inside and turned off the lights. The next morning, I woke early again, before the sun, before the street lights faded. I made another cup of tea and stood by the window. Frost lined the edges of the glass, turning my garden into lace. I checked my email. Among the newsletters and appointment reminders was one from Mr. Ledbetter. Documents ready for review. I dressed, pulled on my winter coat, and walked to his office. It was brisk, and my breath rose in small clouds. In my gloved hand, I carried the envelope with the personal letter I had written. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It simply said, "To whomever reads this after I'm gone, this isn't punishment. This is clarity. I gave because I wanted to, but giving should never be assumed. Love is not debt. Family is not a blank check." I chose Claire because she saw me, not for what I provided, but for who I am. I attached it to the trust. Mr. Ledbetter notarized everything while I watched. His hands were slow but certain. When it was done, he looked up and said softly, "You've given them plenty of chances. Now you've given yourself one." I nodded. Exactly. Outside, I bought myself a bouquet of lilacs from the grocery store. A small extravagance. I set them in the chipped vase near the sink and watched them brighten the kitchen. And as I turned to make lunch, my phone buzzed. Nathan again. Another text. "Mom, please call. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." But I didn't reply. Because finally, it was in hand. Mine. And I wasn't letting go. I placed the phone face down on the counter and stared at the vase of lilacs. Their soft purple hue was delicate, almost shy, but there was strength in their quiet bloom. That's how I felt. Soft in spirit, but no longer willing to shrink. I poured myself a glass of water and went out to the backyard. The garden hadn't been tended since October, and the frost had taken most of what was left. But the soil was still mine. The paths I had laid with my own hands, the raised beds Nathan once helped me build. I stood there a long while, remembering how I used to picture his kids running through the rows of tomatoes, how I once imagined family dinners with all of us here, laughing under string lights I never bothered to buy. I knelt and pulled a few weeds. Even in winter, they found their way through the cracks. I yanked them with purpose, tossing them into a bucket. After an hour, my knees ached, but my chest felt light. The phone buzzed again inside the house. I didn't hurry. When I came back in, I saw 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail. I pressed play and listened. Nathan's voice came through, low and shaky. "Mom, I don't know what's going on. Julia's furious. The tuition payment bounced. The car insurance lapsed. You can't just cut everything off like this without telling us. I'm your son. We've always relied on you. Look, I'm sorry if we hurt your feelings or something, but you can't just do this. Call me." I deleted it. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. I had said it in my own way, with my actions, with my absence. I wasn't a resource. I wasn't a contingency plan. I was a person. A mother, yes, but not a servant, not a doormat. Later that afternoon, I walked to the library and picked up a few books. A new novel Claire had recommended and 2 memoirs by women who had reclaimed their lives after decades of being overlooked. I sat in the reading nook by the window and opened the first one. The opening line read, "I thought I had to earn rest. I was wrong." I smiled. I read half the book before the sun dipped too low for comfort. At home, I cooked stew. I put on music, something low and instrumental. I ate by candlelight again, not for tradition, but because I liked how it made the room feel warmer. And as I rinsed the dishes, I thought about all the little choices that had brought me here. None of them loud, none of them dramatic, but each one a brick in the wall of a new life I was building. The next morning, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo. Me, standing alone in the airport terminal on Thanksgiving, holding the pie, looking straight at the camera. A note on the back. "You didn't deserve this. I'm sorry." No signature. But I knew who had sent it. Claire had mentioned her roommate taking pictures at the airport, documenting people for a student project. She must have seen me there and told Claire later. My chest tightened, but I didn't cry. I placed the photo in a frame and set it beside my bed. Not as a reminder of abandonment, but of survival. I made it through that moment, and I made it through the silence that followed. Days passed in a rhythm I didn't rush. I organized the attic, donated old clothes, baked a lemon loaf just because the kitchen felt like it needed something sweet. On Friday, I received a letter in the mail. Not typed, not cold, handwritten, from Julia. It read, "Margaret, I know you're upset. I know Thanksgiving didn't go how it should have, but I hope you understand that it wasn't personal. We were just overwhelmed. There were so many guests, so much pressure, and we thought it might be simpler that way. I see now it wasn't. I regret not speaking up. The kids miss you. We all do. I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking for a second chance. Sincerely, Julia." I read it 3 times. The tone was softer than Nathan's voicemail, less entitled, but it still didn't acknowledge the depth of what they had done. There was no admission of cruelty, no apology for the lies, just regret for how it unfolded. I didn't reply. Not because forgiveness was impossible, but because trust wasn't free, and I wasn't interested in giving out blank invitations to people who had revoked mine. Instead, I wrote a new letter. This one to Claire. "Sweetheart, thank you for showing up, for seeing me, for holding both the truth and my hand. You gave me the courage to see myself again, not as a shadow in the background, but as someone worthy of the full picture. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this: you will always have a place at my table. You are not just my granddaughter. You are my lighthouse. Love, Grandma." I mailed it the same day. I returned home, lit another candle, and sat at the table. No empty seats haunted me, no echoing expectations. Just a woman with a heart still beating, hands still capable, and a soul finally learning to breathe. And for the first time in a long while, I whispered something I hadn't dared to believe in years. I am not too late. I am just in time. The first snow came that night, quietly. I awoke just before dawn to find the world blanketed in white, soft and unbroken. The garden, the sidewalk, even the crooked fence along the back alley looked fresh, like they'd all been forgiven. I made tea and stood by the window in my robe, watching the stillness. Something about snow always felt like a reset, an invitation to start over, to make new tracks. Claire called mid-morning. Her voice came through bright and warm. "Did you get snow?" she asked. "A good inch or two," I replied. "The world's gone quiet. It's lovely." "I wish I were there. I'd force you into a snowball fight." I laughed. "Don't tempt me. My aim's still pretty sharp." She was calling from her dorm just before class. We didn't talk long, but we didn't have to. Every word carried more weight than years of forced family dinners ever did. After we hung up, I bundled up and went outside to shovel the front steps. A neighbor walked by, Mrs. Green, from 2 doors down. She paused, tugged her hat lower, and said, "You're glowing, Margaret. Retirement suits you." I chuckled. "It's not retirement, dear. It's realignment." She smiled and kept walking. I stood a moment longer in the snow, letting her words settle. Maybe I was glowing. Maybe shedding the weight of unreciprocated love left a person a little lighter. That afternoon, I received a second letter. This one from Nathan. Short, printed, clinical. "Mom, if you've changed your will, I think it's only fair that we discuss it. There's a lot of family history to consider, and Claire is still young. Please reconsider your decision. At the very least, call me back." There was no warmth, just assertion, as if love were a ledger, and I owed him something before the books could be closed. I placed the letter in the shredder. It whirred softly, spitting his demands into ribbons. I stood there a moment, my hand resting on the machine, then turned and left the room. No more space for that. Not here. Not in this new life I was tending to like a winter garden. I spent the next few days doing simple things. I crocheted a scarf. I organized my spice cabinet. I wrote out recipes I wanted Claire to have one day, carefully notating tips in the margins. Add lemon zest here. It lifts the whole dish. I dusted the photo frames along the hallway and replaced a few of the old pictures with new ones. Snapshots of the lake, a pressed flower from last spring, and the photo of me at the airport Claire had sent. Each frame felt like a chapter. Each one told the truth. On Sunday, I went to church for the first time in months. Not because I needed absolution, but because I needed stillness. Familiar hymns washed over me. The pastor's words were gentle and unremarkable, but the silence between sentences felt holy. Afterward, I stayed behind and lit a small votive for strength, for clarity, for the version of me that had waited so long to feel seen. I left with peace clutched in both hands. The following week, a parcel arrived from Claire. Inside was a small canvas she'd painted, a scene of the kitchen window with snow just starting to fall. She'd captured it perfectly. The poinsettia blooming on the sill, the faint reflection of my face in the glass. She'd titled it, "Still Here." I cried when I saw it. Not the kind of tears that burn or sting. The kind that cleanse, that remind you you're still alive. I hung it above the mantel and sat beneath it for a while long, staring, remembering, releasing. A few days later, I ran into Julia at the pharmacy. We stood 2 aisles apart, both holding prescriptions, both too surprised to pretend we didn't see each other. She walked over, hesitant. "Hi, Margaret," she said. "Hi, Julia." Her hands fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve. "How have you been?" I gave her a polite smile. "Well, quite well, actually." She hesitated again, then leaned in slightly. "Nathan's struggling. Things have been tense. I know he's upset, but I think he misses you. The boys do too." I nodded, but said nothing. "I'm sorry," she added quickly, "for how things happened. I should have said something sooner." I studied her face. She looked tired, worn, maybe even honest. "Thank you," I said. She opened her mouth again, as if to say more, then stopped. "Would you, maybe, like to come for dinner? Not to fix anything, just to see the boys." I took a breath, not deep, just enough to anchor myself. "I appreciate the offer. I'll think about it." And I meant it. I walked out into the bright afternoon, the sun reflecting off snowbanks. I didn't feel shaken. I didn't feel guilted. I felt chosen by myself. Later that night, I told Claire about the encounter. "What do you think?" she asked. I took my time before answering. "I think forgiveness is something we carry, not something we owe. And right now, I'm still choosing how to carry it." She understood. She always did. And when we hung up, I sat beneath her painting again and whispered, "Still here." Not broken, not bitter, just standing. Like the poinsettia, like the house, like the snow outside, still here, still mine. The days passed more gently after that. Winter lingered longer than usual, draping the streets in hush and silver. I leaned into the slowness. I began baking again, not because anyone expected pies for gatherings or grandsons needed snacks, but because the scent of cinnamon in my kitchen made me feel held. I brought cookies to the library staff, donated scarves I'd knitted to the community center, and once, on a quiet Tuesday, invited the new widow 2 houses down in for tea. Her name was Edna, and she said, with a trembling voice, "I didn't know if anyone would even notice he was gone." I reached across the table and held her hand. "I see you," I said, and I meant it. I was learning that kindness didn't have to be self-sacrifice. It could be given without being drained, offered without losing oneself. I didn't owe the world a bleeding heart to prove its worth. I could give what I chose to give and hold what I needed to hold. One morning, I received an invitation, a card, embossed and formal, with Nathan and Julia's names printed in gold at the top. It was for their anniversary party. "Please join us for a celebration of our love and family," it read. I turned the card over. No note, no handwritten word, just the hollow polish of pretense. I sat with it in my lap for a while, my tea growing cold, and then I set it aside. Not with anger, with knowing. They were still trying to stitch together a picture without fixing the frame. I would not pretend for their comfort. I mailed back the RSVP with a single word: decline. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. I had spent years defending my absence from their table. Now I was learning to sit at my own. Spring began to peek through the snow by March. Small green shoots curled from the earth, hesitant but brave. I joined a gardening group, just a few older women who met weekly to swap seeds and stories. We laughed more than we dug. It felt like a gift to belong to something with no history attached, no expectations, just presence. Claire visited over her spring break. She arrived with her arms full, bags, books, and a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked along the highway. We cooked together, walked the neighborhood, stayed up late talking about art and heartbreak and everything in between. One night, as we sat on the porch under a soft blue dusk, she turned to me and said, "Grandma, I don't think you realize how strong you are." I smiled gently. "Maybe not strong. Maybe just finally honest." She nodded. "That's strength too." Before she left, she placed a new sketch on my fridge, an unfinished portrait of me, holding a watering can, the garden behind me in bloom. She had written in the corner, "Becoming." I stared at it long after she'd gone, tracing the soft pencil lines with my eyes. Becoming. Not completed, not done, in motion. And it felt right. That week, I got a final email from Nathan. No demands this time, no questions, just a single paragraph. "Mom, I understand you're angry, or hurt. Maybe both. I can't undo the past, and maybe I didn't try hard enough to understand your side. But I want to try now. Not because I need anything, just because I miss you. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I stared at the screen, read it again, then again. I didn't respond. Not yet. But I didn't delete it either. Some wounds don't need salt or stitches. They just need space. And for now, that's what I needed too. Later that evening, I lit a candle and placed it near the window. It wasn't for anyone. It wasn't a symbol or a message. It was just light, steady, quiet, unapologetic. Like me. I wrote a new letter to myself in my journal. "Dear Margaret, you have not been forgotten. You have not been erased. You are not small, not invisible. You are enough. Not because of what you give, but because of who you are. And you are still becoming." I signed it with my full name. I folded the page and slipped it behind the old recipes I'd tucked away for Claire. One day, she might find it. One day, she might read it. And if she ever doubts her own voice, maybe she'll remember mine. The world didn't end when I stopped giving everything away. It began. In silence, in refusal, in warm bread, in lilacs, in snow that blanketed the hard things until they softened. I didn't lose a family. I shed a fantasy. I didn't walk away from love. I found it in the mirror, in Claire's smile, in my own hands. I am not bitter. I am blooming. And if you see me walking alone now, know this. I'm not lonely. I'm just finally walking in the right direction. Toward myself, toward home. Forever mine. Forever enough. If you've ever been made to feel small, if you've ever been forgotten by the very people you raised, know this. You are not too late. You are not past your time. You are not invisible. You are becoming. And your voice still matters. Please subscribe to hear more stories like mine, because someone out there needs to know they're not alone.